Well, hello, Brittney, and thank you so much for joining us on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. I am thrilled to have you here. And like I said, I've been listening to some of your podcasts. I've been following you around, and you've got some great stuff that you want to talk to us today about, which I'm really excited to share with the audience. But before we get started, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here and to speak to your community and to speak to you as well. My name is Brittney Rossie. I am a brand consultant and business coach. So I help women in the online space create a captivating personal brand that helps them to convert clients, build wealth, and ultimately leave a legacy on their terms because everyone has different goals. And so that's really intentional brand strategy. And so that's what I do.
That's amazing. From your point, most people, when they start going through these entrepreneurial processes of starting a business, there's always some kind of passion or motivation behind it before they take that leap of faith, really. What is it that really kind of have been driving you to start your business that way?
This is a fun question because I just had this conversation yesterday. I feel, for me, freedom is a really big driver for me, which I don't think most people pick that F word. People are like family or fun or whatever. But for me, freedom is really important. Freedom of choice is, I think, a rare commodity in our world, in this global economy. Freedom of choice, what we get to do with our time, what we do with our money, what we can do with our family and for our families. So the reason why I do what I do is, one, for personal freedom, but two, to bring that freedom to others. Because the work that I do, it helps people become free mentally, with their mindset, with their choices, and then ultimately through systems and strategies, around their personal brand, with their finances, right? With their time. When we choose to build a business around our lives instead of our lives around the business, right? We can build a life that we love and a life of freedom and choice, of travel, or whatever that looks like for you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I think, that, like you said, there's so many times when people go through this kind of story, but they say all the other things, but they don't always focus on the freedom. And there's so many different types of freedom available for anybody who is an entrepreneur or starts going down the entrepreneurial journey. How did you get started then in your business? I mean, how did you start with the whole idea of, listen, I've decided now I'm going to take this leap of faith. I'm going to start my own business. How did that go for you?
It was a little bit of a natural transition. I had been working in Central America with my husband. We were doing a lot of nonprofit work in local communities, remote communities. And so we had a lot of downtime. We didn't have kids or pets or anything to do in the evening. It was just us. And so I said, I really want to use my time intentionally. I want to start to develop a skill set that I can use to make an impact. And I've always been interested in learning design. And so I just started learning the Adobe suite in my downtime in the evenings, just learning to be creative and kind of following an interest and a passion. And a side interest was, because we were in the nonprofit world, I realized, a lot of the marketing, the branding, the graphics, the visuals for nonprofits aren't the best because they just don't have the budget, right? They're always short staffed. They're always short on money. So I said, why don't I just serve a couple nonprofits and help them improve their presence, because I believe in them and I want to help them get visible. I want to help them go further, faster. So what that ended up translating into was me learning about branding and marketing and helping people get visible with really important causes and missions, things that I could stand behind and believe in. And maybe I couldn't contribute financially, but I could contribute with my skills and my talents that I was developing, right? And in that process, I learned about what businesses need and what they want, right? Because just because it's a nonprofit organization doesn't mean that it's not like running a business, right? You still have to run the organization. So in that process, I discovered that I really loved helping the personal brands, like people at the top, people who were helping drive the vision or maybe was the face of the organization, develop that confidence, help them identify what their strengths are and stand on those things. And so just over the years, I've kind of dialed it in and honed it into the personal brand. But it started with just following an interest, following a passion in my downtime, and serving, right? Serving and meeting a need that was there.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. That's so amazing to hear as well. And I think that's part of why I love doing these podcast interviews, is because you hear so many amazing stories. And it just shows that, you know, for anybody who wants to think about going down the entrepreneurial journey, that it is just for the selected few. That's not the case.
No, no.
It is just, you know, it's just about where you're at and where you want to be, and just taking that leap of faith. And everybody's got such a unique story to tell of how they got started. And also it's not something that just happens overnight. It's a journey that you go on.
That's right.
And it constantly develops all the way along the way. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's really amazing. And that ties in so well with what we want to talk today about. And that's all about strength-based personal branding, which is obviously where your strengths lie.
It's definitely something I'm passionate about.
So we've got some great stuff that we want to cover today. And I think starting off with it, why don't you talk to us about how to stand out in a saturated market?
Yes, I love talking about this. I think a lot of what prevents potential entrepreneurs from getting started and pursuing their dream is this feeling like there's not enough space for me. Mm-hmm. It's already been done before, right? We hear this all the time, like, everyone's already doing it. Like, I'm not going to be any different. Or, you know, someone's already got like 2 years on me, right? They've been in this for 2 years. I can't catch up. But that really should not be the thing that prevents us from stepping into that dream or that vision that we have for our lives, right? Just because it's already been done before does not mean there's not space for you to do it differently. And the number one thing that will help us to stand out in a saturated market is ourselves, because nobody can be you, right? And I think this is a really important point to pause on, because truly, if anybody tries to imitate Brittney Rossie or you, like this, it's not going to look right. It's not going to feel right. It's going to be icky. It's going to feel like an imitation. It's not the real thing. So the thing that makes us stand out is us. And when a person is clear on what they're good at and they operate in their strengths, then that is what catches people's attention. They say, oh my goodness, this person is really great at blank, right? And it doesn't have to be anything really entrepreneurial. You could be really good at doing your hair, right? You might have a brilliant smile. It could be that you are thoughtful and you compliment people at what they're good at. Maybe it's that you're a great listener. So these are inherent qualities in us that we often take for granted. And we tend to dismiss when someone compliments it, like, hey, you know, I really just enjoyed being with you and talking with you today. You asked really good questions, right? That little thing at the end, you asked really good questions. That means that you're tuned in and that you're listening and that you care, that you're curious. And that posture is important to pay attention to, right? So don't ever downplay a compliment, right? Even if it's like, hey, you have a brilliant smile. And when you smile, you light up the room. Like, that is something that says, hey, you're an atmosphere changer. Your presence, your acknowledgement of something, when you smile, when you light up about something, people take notice, right? So don't downplay those things. There's also more technical expertise. You know, maybe your strength is in something technical like code. Maybe you are a creative. That is also something not to downplay. I have so many friends and family members who have a natural strength at something. Like, maybe you're the go-to person in your family for all things tech. Like, when the Wi-Fi goes out, they're coming to you and they're saying, like, you're the genius of the family, and all you're doing is unplugging and replugging in the router, right? That's it. But that strength of yours, that insight that you know to do that, don't downplay those things. It's important, because those strengths are not natural to somebody else. They're natural to you. It's easy for you. And this is also a little thing, is like, just because it's easy for you doesn't mean that it's easy for everybody else. And I think that we get a little bit in our own bubbles and we don't see that. Can you relate to this? Have you seen this before in your own friends and family? Like, they downplay it. Yeah.
And it's so true from a personal experience. If people used to come and give me compliments, it was like, oh, you know, and you always say something the opposite, because you almost like feeling like you don't want to confront that kind of compliment that you got. And it's so wrong. We shouldn't do that. We should accept it with open arms and say, thank you so much. That is really kind of you.
Right.
So I know what you mean by that as well. I used to do exactly the same. But when it comes to personal strengths, I think that's what you're saying there stands out a lot, because people are not very much tuned into what their strengths are. And there are
Mm,
so many ways in, especially on the internet, you can go out there, you can go and find out what your strengths are. And I'll have a couple of notes in the show notes to it as well, if you want to go and find out and do some tests about what your strengths are. But I think it's so important for you to also be more open-minded and just zone in a little bit about what your strengths are and think about what makes you unique as a person, because you are unique just as your DNA is.
right.
So I love that you're talking about that. And the other thing that you said that is really important is the number one thing that will make you attractive to your dream clients. And I think this loops in a little bit to what we've just spoken about. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
I would love to. I will never forget the moment when someone told me the fact that my confidence was the most attractive thing about me, and that when I spoke, people leaned in and listened. And I didn't know what to do with that, because the gravity and the intentionality with which someone told me that, it really just, it impressed upon me the moment. I don't know if you've ever experienced one of those things where you actually like listened to what someone was complimenting you about, kind of took it seriously. And over the years, I've kind of found this to be a truth. When someone is confident, it has nothing to do with what they look like, their appearance, how they dress. When someone is confident, it is attractive.
Yeah.
You want to be in that person's presence. You want to continue learning from them. You just want to be around them, because the stuff that they are doing, the culture that they carry with them, it's more caught than it is taught. You can't learn these things in a book, right? And so when you start to be around people who are confident about who they are and what they can do well in a way that isn't icky, in a way that isn't prideful, in a way that isn't off-putting, but is graciously confident, right? There's a gracious confidence about it. It's a humble confidence. Then it's incredibly attractive. People desire to be around that. Nobody wants to be around an expert that's second guessing themselves, right? When I go to the dentist, I want them to know which tooth has the cavity, right? I don't want them guessing. And so for them to have this gracious confidence about that they know what they're doing, that is attractive. And it builds trust and confidence in your potential customers or in your potential clients. It depends on if you're a service-based entrepreneur or a product-based entrepreneur. Either way, this confidence piece is so important. And I think we miss this when we sign up for entrepreneurship. You're signing up for a lot of personal development. Let me just tell you this. You have to believe in yourself, in your product, in your service, whatever you're creating, right? Because if you don't have confidence in it, then nobody else will, right? So I think that if you don't have confidence in your strengths, or you're unaware of what your strengths are, like she said, there are so many different ways to identify those things. One example is just taking like a moment to step back and just assess, right? And think like, what is my go-to thing? What do I enjoy doing? What am I pretty good at? What comes naturally to me? If you get stuck there, I encourage you to chat with your family and friends and say, what am I the go-to person in the family for? Am I the person that everyone comes to cry on? Am I that shoulder for people? Or am I the tech person? Am I the creative? Am I musical? What is the thing that makes me stand out in our family or in our friend group? And if that isn't pinpoint enough for you, it doesn't give you enough clarity, you can absolutely go do online assessments or things like Myers-Briggs. My personal favorite is Strengths Finders.
Yes.
So, there are so many, and each one has kind of a different focus. But those things, the assessments, will give you language. And that's really important, because if we can't articulate what we're good at, then no one's going to know what we're good at. They're not going to want to work with us. And so I think that that's why I stand so strongly on this little, hill of, you have to be confident. And that is what is attractive to our pre-clients, right? People who want to work with us, they're watching us, and they're just waiting to see what we say and how we say it.
Yeah, I've actually got a great story to tell. One of my students recently, I've had this exact same conversation with her, and she is a phenomenal person, but she lacks some confidence. And I can say this out loudly because we had that conversation and she knows this.
Yeah.
But we're working on her confidence and we're going through a stage of building it. And it was about last week, I got a message from her and she's like, oh my gosh, I just had an aha moment, so to speak. And she was going through this stage where she was still questioning herself. But she decided to push herself a little bit out of her comfort zone. She signed up for an event where she only had to speak for about 10-15 minutes in front of a whole group of people about her industry and about her niche. She said she was shaking to the core when she got on that stage. But she said when she opened her mouth and she started talking, I want to cry when I think about this because it was so good. When she opened her mouth and she started talking, the confidence that exuded from her every being, because she knew her topic, but she also knew that her strength was in the information that she was sharing. People came afterwards and complimented her. And I think part of that is also because she knew what her strengths were, but also she knew what her topic was about, and she was confident in what the information was that she was going to share with everyone. And with that, the kind of scaredness, the how can I say, the unconscious effect that she wasn't confident in herself in order to do this kind of dissipated because she wasn't focusing on that. She was focusing on the information that she was giving. And that was an amazing shift for her. So much so that she's got booked just from that one event. She got booked up for a couple of other events coming up now because the people in the audience were like, she's amazing. She's got the confidence. And yeah, I was just so proud of her for doing that. So sorry, I wanted to bring that story in there because I thought it just, tied in so well with what you're just saying.
It's a perfect example, right? And that confidence breeds more opportunity. It breeds invitation. Why? Because people want that. They want to be around that. They want to be influenced by it. And that is a brilliant, brilliant example of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, I love talking about these things and, sharing these kind of examples. Like I said, it almost brought tears to my eyes. I had to swallow it a little bit away. Another thing you want to talk to us about is also, I think, really equally important, overcoming objections to yourself. And this is, I think, a very, very deep topic. And this is something we can go on very, very deeply for a long time. But why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes. So one of the obstacles, right, to people standing in their strength or having confidence, maybe it's they don't feel confident about speaking, but they have confidence in the information. They have confidence in something that they can do, right? When people are still kind of struggling to overcome that hump, it's preventing them from having the success they know is inevitable, that they know is theirs. What I find oftentimes is there's still this objection to self that really it's rooted deep in the psyche, right? This belief system that we hold about ourselves, what is true about us, what is true for us. And there's a little bit of a healing process there, right? And like I said, when you're signing up to be an entrepreneur, you're signing up for some self-development that you have no idea what's gonna be exposed, what's gonna hit, right? Because you just got to put it all out there and acknowledge where your strengths and weaknesses are. And so when we start to work on this side of the business, the confidence side and ourselves, one of the things that comes up for myself, for a lot of my own clients, is this belief, this objection to self of, can I really do this? Is this really for me? And what I've found is something that I call declarations. Some people call them affirmations. But I wanted to share a little bit of this story because for me, it took a minute for me to get over this. And I wanted to share a little bit of a strategy that I think is helping my clients to overcome this piece. So when I started hearing the word affirmations, I'm not sure if are you familiar with this idea?
Yes.
I wasn't always exposed to it. It's a relatively new concept to me. And I heard it and I was like, well, this is just a bunch of hullabaloo, right? Like, this is just ridiculousness. They're lying to themselves. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's woo-woo, whatever language that you put to that. But when someone reframed it for me and they said, no, this is a declaration of what you're going to be and what is going to happen, it was a bit of a shift for me mentally. And, it may not always feel true that we are good at something, right? We always have off days. right? Nobody has 100% good days in business or even in life, right? But this process and routine is what I have. I have a mindset practice. And I like the word practice because that means there's grace for me not to get it right every day. But it's a practice to say, you know what? I'm not going to believe this lie that was planted in me at a young age about who I am and what I can do. But instead, I'm going to declare what I choose to believe that I am or choose to believe is possible for me, even when it doesn't feel true. And I can tell you that some of the biggest breakthroughs in confidence and finance and impact have happened since I started out loud, verbally declaring in the morning. If you guys could see my office right now, I have behind me, hanging on the wall, a little frame that has a list of objections that I'm overcoming about myself, about the truth of my situation. And I declare these things out into the world. And when we say these things out loud, and I'm no psychologist, total disclaimer here, but I have heard, and I've seen lots of research on, there's just connections made in our brain, right? Synapses fire, new pathways are made. And it is a very practical process. If you are stuck here in this process of the branding for your business or your confidence in your brand, this would be a great next step for you to consider doing is developing a declarations list, creating a mindset practice to help you stand in those strengths and overcome those objections to self, because it is, I like to think of it as a hard skill set, right? We have to develop the skill set as entrepreneurs. Otherwise, we're not going to make it, right? We've got to build this resilience up to hearing no, to making mistakes, to failing, to hitting send before the email is fully ready, right? So we have to have something where we can encourage ourselves and build ourselves up, because no one's going to do that for us except for ourselves, unless we have a great support community. And I know a lot of women don't have that. They're doing it on their own. And so does that resonate with you? Have you heard of the affirmations or declarations?
Oh my gosh. It's when you said it, I started smiling so broadly, because in my members club, I literally just, we've got a November masterclass coming out all about motivation and inspiration. And specifically in that, I'm talking about the science of affirmations, the neuroplasticity in the brain and how it actually works. Because in particular, when I started hearing about affirmations, it was like, oh, what is this about? Is it one of those kind of magic formulas people are talking about? But then it led down the road where the science behind it lies. And I did a little bit more research, and I was blown away when I realized that there was actually science to back this up. Right. And when I started going down that rabbit hole, it just opened up a doorway for me, where so much so where you have your declarations where you talk to yourself in the morning. I've recorded myself with my affirmations and I meditate with that in the morning. And people looked at me as like, you really talk to yourself in the morning? And I thought, why do I need another person to talk to me and help me meditate in the morning when I can do it myself? And I can hear myself go through my own affirmations. And that's something, I'm telling my students, and I'm, encouraging anybody who's listening to at least get some declarations for yourself, or get some affirmations, do some research about it, just think about it a little bit, because it is so, so true. And there's science backing it up, because what you're doing is you're not just building confidence in yourself, but you're also looking to your future, to your goals, where you want to be. And if you start talking to yourself now about those kind of affirmations or declarations you're making about where you want to be one day in the future, but you're talking to yourself now about as if it has already happened, it's like new pathways in your brain that is starting to build, starting to connect, and certain opportunities and doors will start opening up for you, because you're now more tuned in to where you want to go, and you start seeing different opportunities for you in order to reach that goal and dream. So this is something that, like I said, I get really excited about it, because I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, another thing that you wanted to talk about, and I'm sorry I'm jumping from one topic to another one, but I think this also ties into a little bit about what we're talking, is the brand position strategies. This is a little bit more about the strategies that you use for your brand positioning, but talk to us a little bit about that as well.
Yes. So there's kind of two sides to brand strategy, brand positioning. One's a little bit more on the personal side, and that's what we've started talking about. Like, got to start with us and our confidence in ourselves. And then it moves into the more technical side of brand positioning, which has to do with like cost and niche and all these things. So I have 5 brand positioning strategies that I feel like are the most common, and we can run through those. And I will let you know that there is one of them that is really ineffective, but it's oh so common. So I just want to kind of list them off and kind of explain what they are so that you know and can make a decision about how do you want to position your brand. And then I will encourage you to not pick one of them. And you'll see this everywhere you look once you hear it. But the first position strategy really is cost-driven positioning, right? You can say, we offer everything those people do, but we cost less. Or you can say, no, we're the most expensive, and you know, that is the position. And you're appealing to culture, right? You're appealing to being the latest and greatest and the newest product on the market. And so, you know, that is a challenging strategy. It can be hard to break into a higher tier of cost-driven pricing. If you're a little bit behind your competitors, you're not as effective in what you do in your service or product. And also being the cheapest is also a very hard strategy as well, because you have to sell more. You've got to be hyper visible. And so finding your sweet spot, I recommend, if you're just getting started, not necessarily utilizing cost-driven positioning, but it can be effective. If you can provide a level of service for less than your competitor, there's good incentive for people to work with you, right? So this is pretty common sense. We've all gone to different stores because we can get a better deal over here, right? And so that's the first brand positioning strategy. The next one is niche or niche specialization. I don't know how you say it over there, but I say niche. And in this, you're focusing, you're dialing in. You're dialing in the service that you provide, or you're dialing into the audience that you serve. So a great example of niche specialization would be if you're in a photography industry, right? There's all different kinds of photographers. There's nature photographers, there's documentary photographers, there's wedding photographers, there's studio portrait photographers. And so if you start speaking to the wedding industry professionals, right? Wedding photographers, they have a totally different pressure and timeline and way of doing things that studio portrait photographers are not going to relate to. So by dialing in who you're speaking to, your potential audience or your potential clients are going to say, oh my goodness, she's speaking directly to me, and they're going to respond more strongly. Another example of this is we have a very mossy yard, and it's like walking on carpet when we go outside. And we have this one section that's very grassy, and I was like, oh, this is just such an eyesore. And I started YouTubing lawn specialist, and I found this gal. Her name's Mossin Annie, and I consumed everything that she had. Who knew that I would be looking up moss lawns one day? But she knew, and she had this specialization. And I was like, when I'm ready to take action in the spring about my yard, I'm going to work with her, right? And so, you know, you never know who's going to be looking for something really specific. And so to dial in, even if it feels really obscure, can be a great strategy depending on your industry. Does that make sense, what I'm saying here? It can feel weird, but it's a really smart strategy. So another one is to kind of have an industry specialization. So again, it's similar to a niche, but it's industry focused. So sometimes it has less to do with how you're dialing in your service or your audience, and maybe you're focusing on an industry. It's a niching, but it's a little bit different. So maybe you're an event planning industry and you're focusing on corporate events instead of wedding events. So again, specialization is really helpful when you're positioning yourself and your brand and who you're serving. And then there's role-focused specialization. So if you are working with corporate employees, maybe a role focus would be, I'm only working with CEOs. I'm only working with C-suite level executives, right? Because their needs are different than the manager's needs. And the manager's needs are different than the employees or entry-level employees' needs, right? So focusing on a role that you're helping to support is also another way to position yourself in your branding, or to specialize your service. Because people are going to say, Brittney can really speak to me because she understands the C-suite. And they'll be more quick to dismiss somebody who's a generalist. They may not say, oh, they may not understand what I'm really needing here. So don't be afraid to specialize, okay? And then the last one, and this is the least effective, so I discourage this one, but it is quality of service positioning. And a lot of people say like, oh, we have the best quality product. We have the best quality course. We have the best quality one-to-one scenarios, right? But those should be inherent, right? We should always be providing a quality service or product.
Absolutely.
It's not very compelling. So to stand only on that is not a wise idea. It should certainly always be part of what we're providing, part of our positioning, but it can't be the only thing. So I wanted to put that out there and just say, if you're only standing on quality, add something, add a specialization of some sort that you can stand on with that. And I can almost guarantee you're going to find some success. You'll find one client, you'll find one person who you can help. And that's going to make all the difference. It's going to give you insight as to how to dial in even better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that, especially on the quality basis, which is one of the things that I've seen standing out, especially in the online world so many times. And apart from everybody believing that whatever their brand or their service or their products are, even though they feel that it's the best quality, anybody who's coming to look at your brand or your product or your service, it might not be the best quality for them. So it is something that you also need to be open-minded about. And I think that's where you're saying the key element is not just to go on the quality alone, but to add another strategy as to how you're going to stand out. Oh my gosh, I love talking about this. The last thing that you want to talk to us about, which I think it is something that a lot of people kind of miss out on, and they don't use that, is a tagline. Talk to us about a tagline. I think the audience would love this topic as well.
Oh my goodness. I love talking about taglines. They're so fun. So I think that it's important to kind of differentiate here a little bit of the difference between a tagline and a slogan. So here's a fun little fact. You can pull it out of your fountain of useless knowledge when you're at parties, but a slogan, it's Scottish for battle cry, right? And it's really short, it's really powerful, you really stick it to people, it's to the point. And oftentimes a slogan is used for sub-products, right? So it's not your overarching brand, but maybe you have a really powerful product that's taking off and it gets its own slogan, it gets its own kind of recognizable line, right? Its own tagline, but it's a slogan, it's a battle cry. A tagline is a little bit longer. It is your overarching statement for your business, and it often includes who you are, who you help, and the benefit of what you are helping someone to do. So an example would be, for me, I'll use mine. I help women in the online space create captivating brands. Why? So that they can convert clients, build wealth, and leave a legacy on their terms. And so it identifies who we are, who we help, and the benefit of the service that we provide. And so that's a great little formula or framework to kind of hang your hat on, but it doesn't have to be so long. It can be a 3 core value piece. It could be excellence, integrity, and authenticity. Like those are the 3 things at the end of the day you're going to hang your hat on as your business. And you can stand on those 3 things. You can unpack those 3 things. So it doesn't have to be terribly long, but it should really cast vision for who you are and who you help. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you said that, I think the last element of the tagline, the benefit, is sometimes not even added when people start coming up with their own taglines. So they think about who they are and who they help or who they serve, but sometimes the benefit is overlooked. It's not even added in a tagline. And it's so important to have all three of those elements in your tagline. But even if you start going down just, like integrity, honesty, and excellence as an example, even if you just bullet point the three of them, you got to kind of have somewhere we can just also expand on that a little bit. So when people start looking at your brand, seeing about who you are, and they go integrity, excellence, honesty as an example, people read that, but they read those words everywhere. So maybe on an about page, you need to expand on that a little bit more and explain why you're using those kind of captions as part of your tagline. From your experience in working with some of your customers and clients, do you sometimes help them come up with their taglines? Do you have some examples of that as well?
I do help them come up with their taglines. One fun example is for a personal brand for real estate agent. One person came up with, they really loved their dog, and they wanted to incorporate their dog into their branding and into their recognition, right, for their visibility. And they have a bird dog which points. It points when they're hunting. And so the real estate agent said, pointing you in the right direction of your home. And so, there's a lot of fun, creative things that we can do with taglines. They don't have to be so stiff. For a real estate agent, it's pretty obvious what you do. You help people buy and sell homes. There's still definitely room for specialization. Maybe you help military families. Military families have specific needs. Or maybe you help renters. Renters have specific needs. But pointing people in the right direction of their home and using the little dog, that becomes very iconic. It's very recognizable on social media, and it's fun. It's a little corny, it's a little on the nose, but this person has a sense of humor, right? They don't mind that, and that's their personality coming out. So, that's one fun example. Goodness, I'm trying to think of another one. I have another real estate agent that comes to mind off the top of my head. They're really passionate about relationships. And the way that ends up coming out is they use a lot of your language, like Y-O-U-R, your. So I am your Fredericksburg area realtor, and we're going to find your home, and this is your city. And so a lot of their brand messaging, the brand language has to do with serving the people, serving the client. And that's where they hang their hat, as being highly relational, acts of love, acts of service. And that comes through in their tagline of your Fredericksburg area realtor. So I really love that one. It's super short and sweet. And it's their focus is buying and selling homes, so for families. So when a lot of the complementary messaging and branding supports that, but their main tagline is your Fredericksburg family realtor. So I think that, it can be more complex. It can be longer for sure with more of the benefits. But if it is an obvious thing like a real estate agent, it's kind of clearer what you do or the industry that you're in. You can kind of omit those things, but I feel always beneficial to include the benefits or the specialization, if you can, in your tagline.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely amazing what you're saying, and I think these kind of things we can actually dig down and talk a little bit more about them, which gets me really excited and pumped up as well, because I feel there's so much more that we can discuss. But from the bottom of my heart, I just wanted to thank you personally for being here on the podcast. I think there's just so much more information that you can share. But for those of you listening right now, if you want to hear more, by all means, go and just go to Brittney's website. I've got the link in my show notes, so you can obviously go and have a look there as well and get in touch with Brittney if you want to learn a little bit more about obviously personal branding and how to get your own visibility. Brittney, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience?
Just keep going, keep showing up, keep pushing through, keep working on that confidence. There's always new things to overcome. So just keep those declarations and affirmations up in front of you and just keep pressing in. You can do it. I believe in you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. Before we go, actually, you've got a fantastic freebie for the audience, and that is your ultimate brand message workbook. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So once you've gotten to a place where you're feeling really clear about who you want to serve and how you want to serve them, it's time to kind of wordsmith that. And so I find some people kind of get stuck, and I've created a couple different frameworks and formulas for people to kind of play around and work with, depending on what industry they're in. Not all frameworks or formulas are going to work, right? So I don't like cookie cutter businesses, but I want to give you something that you can kind of wrestle with and play around with and wordsmith. And this workbook gives you a lot of frameworks to build your brand message around that you can feel confident, comfortable saying. It rolls off the tongue. You can practice with it. So it's a pretty straightforward and easy workbook, but it's really comprehensive. And I think you're going to really benefit from it. And it's free. So snag it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to have a look as well. And obviously, as I said, the link will be in my show notes. So if you want the workbook, by all means, like, Brittney is giving it away for free, so just go and download it. Talk to us a little bit about your course as well, Map Your Content.
Yes. So if you're anything like me, you have a lot going on in your personal life and in your business. And so you need to be able to map out your content effectively and quickly. And so what I've developed is, again, it's a framework for people to use to be able to map out up to 90 days worth of content in just 3 weeks. And when I say map it out, like, you're creating it and it's done and it's in a scheduler for 90 days. So if you are looking to take a vacation, if you're going on maternity leave, wanting to take a break, walk away, you can schedule up to 90 days worth of content in a very linear way, in a very productive and effective way, so that you are building presence, you're being thoughtful about SEO, and it really goes on autopilot, and you can be fully present. Either maybe you want to be more present on social media, but you're too busy creating content on the fly. This helps you be really intentional about doing that. And so that's available to you guys to help you really maximize your time and your efficiency when you're creating your content.
Amazing. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so, so much. And also the Map Your Content course will also be on the website at the show notes, so you can go and have a look there as well. And then please feel free to leave us a message below this podcast episode. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you feel about what Brittney has said here today. And hopefully you've got some amazing notes that you can take away and obviously help you with your own personal branding. Brittney, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. I really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be in touch soon again as well.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for having me. It was a joy.
Thank you. Take care.